cycle of trying to play Cyberpunk still on my old system just because I'm stubborn. I'm pretty sure at this point I overclocked my system way above what it should have, and it's unstable. It will explode. So that's where I am right now. Besides that, as somebody who's never played cricket in his life, never. I couldn't do sports. Okay, completely uncoordinated. I actually spent a lot of time playing real cricket and a couple of the cricket games. So that's why I try to make sure I get Anuj on the panel here today. That's what I'm playing. What are you guys playing? Just give your mic.
Okay. So in terms of PC games, I used to play Valorant and Counter-Strike. And mobile right now, I started to play a lot real cricket. Not because of we are from same family, but genuinely the game is really good. And Pokemon Unite.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. About me, I play Call of Duty Mobile quite a lot. And real cricket also, I'm a good fan.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern emerge, but okay.
I'm currently playing Tears of the Kingdom. Playing for an hour, watching for 2 hours a day.
I'm just checking my wallet first, just to make sure that you guys haven't paid you guys.
Your mic is
I already credited.
No, so I don't play real cricket because I made it, so I don't play games I make after they release. I'm playing Counter-Strike, probably you can say about 4 hours a week, but that's about it. That's the only gaming that I do.
So I've been, since I was a chess player in school days. So chess is one great obsession that I have. I continue to play that. And now since my son, my daughter, they are big time into gaming. So I'm trying to pick up this thing, Minecraft, which I thought was really crazy. And you can just go on spending hours after hours doing nothing, or rather creating something out of nothing. And Clash of Clans and now PUBG, which my son plays full time. So I'm learning those. So next time round when we meet, I'll have a favorite game for sure.
Thank you for that. Good question, and I think that's lured a few people back. All right, so we'll start. The question given to our panel here is to discuss it's a fairly broad topic, commercialization in games. Now, this can be a very, very broad topic. We can define it in many ways. I've taken the liberty of chatting with the panel and sort of figuring out how we want to steer this. So I have a bunch of questions. Let's look at this more about something that I think will be useful for most of the audience here, which is the different ways we can monetize different offerings in the gaming industry. Across the board, right? From mobile game development to PC to console to esports as a business, not just as a platform. And finally, on the other end, what is it that advertisers, both say performance and non-performance, can look at, can bring into the ecosystem? How can we enhance monetization? Can we do something different to, essentially bring more money into the business? Starting from the top, and what I would suggest is maybe before answering the first question, everybody give a quick introduction about themselves. Before I'll throw a question, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then answer the question. So a little bit about me before I start. I've been in the industry for about 20 years, about 2 decades, started about 17. Foolishly have done everything from run a LAN cafe to write for MMORPG quests to manage communities to do television gaming deals to work for Xbox, launch consoles in India. I was at Google Play before this, where I headed the gaming business for India and a few other countries. Had the pleasure to work with a lot of companies like Tencent, like Garena, everybody else, helped bring them into the market here. And right now, I've co-founded and I run Jetapult, which is a invest and operate company that operates in the mobile casual game space. All right, that was me. And here's the first question, right? We've seen a variety of offerings in the space when it comes to monetizing, both in the specific properties in mobile games, right? But also how esports can look at that monetization from an advertising perspective. In your view, coming from this various spectrums of the gaming industry, what are the key strategies that you've seen give the best results? A, and how do these? I would like to elaborate and perhaps talk about how these strategies differ across platforms. So monetization, sort of an overview. How does it work in your space, and how does it differ from the other platforms that you operate in?
Hi guys, I'm Shiva. I'm founder and CEO of Sky Esports. Sky Esports is one of the leading esports company in India. Coming to our question, monetization and the strategy for executing esports tournaments, it's very simple. It's like we need to engage spectators, how unique and different. It's like make people to watch cricket. Same thing. There is a bunch of games like BGMI, Valorant. How we are going to make people to sit and watch? There are users who play the game but does not watch esports, but making interesting things to make the spectator to watch esports is something we are focusing always. And then how we are engaging the brands, like what is the return of investment we are going to bring to the stakeholders. So these are the key strategy we always used to follow, how we are going to engage the audience, how we are going to make the stakeholders engage their products.
Hi guys, my name is Sumit. I'm the co-founder of GameStack. We are one of the largest, building one of the largest monetization engine for gaming publishers and content creators in the gaming space. We work across the brand sphere, helping understand what are their challenges are, and bridging the gap essentially between the gaming ecosystem and where the brand monies are lying. Typically, we are not an agency model. We focus on more building a service and a product stack. We have a creator tech product which we are establishing in-house, as well as we also work with AAA gaming publishers, helping again solve monetization challenges for them using our tech stack and game services stack. Right. I think we all kind of agree that there is an only limited set of brands that today invest into gaming ecosystem, and that's essentially our problem statement that we are trying to solve to increase the depth because of the large opportunity that currently exists in the Indian gaming ecosystem. We definitely see an opportunity for marketers to take advantage and create healthy environment for the gaming businesses to survive and sustain.
Hey guys, I'm part of Glance. It's part of the InMobi group. InMobi has been monetizing games for more than like 10 years now. Before this, I was creating and managing games for mostly Western markets. I worked across all platforms: Facebook, mobile, Flash, to porting, done most of those stuff. So this as like it's a very broad-based opportunity, and monetization in games, or like commercialization of games, and this means a lot, right? So it's not just the games themselves. Then you have content out of the games that can be monetized, and then there are multiple monetizing opportunities, like the traditional programmatic, which has been existing in forever now, and there are quite a things which are happening in the industry, which has happened in the industry. So even if you look at like out of 10 ads which runs out inside a game, you will find like 8 of them are other games. So basically it's like the ecosystem pulling the ecosystem, like you're just stealing users from other games, and that's what's happening because the external money into the game flow is still less. And I think Sumit was trying to point out on that fact that we still like very few branded ads coming in, and I don't think the ad products are evolved over a period of time, and I think it's like ripe for disruption at this point in time. Very interested to see, and like I'm happy to discuss more on that. I think it'll be like it will see some sort of disruption in like next 2-3 years in a very, very different way.
Hi, I'm Anuj Mankar. Basically, leading Nautilus since inception, sort of founded it, creator of the Real Cricket franchise on mobile. We got acquired by Jet Synthesis in 2020 and then further got invested in by Crafton last year. So I'm going to give the sort of developer angle. We make freemium games essentially. So our models of monetization will include in-app purchases, ad monetization. So within that, again, we have several different units. You have your rewarded videos, you have your interstitial ads, and now very less, but you still have the banner ads, and that's how you sort of monetize. We also do direct deals with brands sometimes to do some native advertisements within the game. So these are all the methods that we sort of use to monetize. I was having a very interesting conversation with Deepak actually just before we went on stage. I'll just let him sort of also talk about, how they're looking at, monetization coming from Dentsu.
Sure. So I work with Dentsu International. I look after the Dentsu Gaming in India. While Dentsu Gaming is pretty big across the globe, but we haven't really got started in India. So these are some of the baby steps that we are taking, and we spend a lot of time interacting with a lot of you. Thanks to CI to invite us in this. And as an agency, what we look for is largely the popularity of the game, one, and number two is the audience, relevant audience present on the platform that we are looking at advertising. So and largely most of the things will depend upon data that we pick up from different sources and data that would come in from your end. So best way to monetize or to get the best from a brand is to ensure that your game is popular. Number two, you need to ensure that you have the right audiences on your platform.
Great, thank you. Oh, that's a lot louder than I thought it would be. Okay. Look, thanks for the quick introduction and sort of setting the stage. There's a reasonable gap in understanding of how monetization works across multiple businesses. I think most of us, most of the audience is familiar with, when I say game monetization or advertising in games, the first thing that comes to mind for most people is the performance ads, right? Just the business of showing ads in games that then leads you to another game, fundamentally. There's been a lot of talk in the last few years, however, about how we can look at this space a little differently, how we can align it more with different forms of media, where brands come in, where value is created differently. A great place for us to start would be to understand what works outside of the traditional in-game advertising. So a question a lot of people have asked me when we talk about what's next is, well, this has been around the world for a while. Gaming has been global. Esports, of course, has been huge even before it came to India. Advertising in games has probably been around since the post-Atari days in some form or the other. So beyond in-game advertising, what other monetization has proven successful in the gaming industry? And are there any truly innovative approaches or trends? And the audience for this is more the young developers and smaller studios that are currently building games, right? How should they look at the world of non-typical in-game advertising and what are the case studies they can look at to integrate at an early level, so when they see success, they don't have to rebuild their game completely to accommodate for this world of brand advertising or whatever it else it is?
So last year, I think in Real Cricket 2020, we brought a semiconductor company AMD to in-game advertising. So it's like placing AMD brand across the stadium. And on top of that, if you take Valorant, they also brought in-game advertising like Heineken 0.0 something. So in terms of beyond the in-game advertising, we have to focus on how we are going to approach the endemic and non-endemic brands, how we are going to integrate in the game. So that is the part. When it comes to esports, we predominantly working with mostly into endemic brands. We in last 2 years we have worked across 50 brands, and on every tournament basis we are working on 6 to 10 brands. It's all about game to game. It difference. The challenges still we are facing is how we are going to bring non-endemic brands to esports and gaming. So endemic.
Could you give us examples of each?
Exactly. So endemic brands like Nvidia, AMD, Intel, like HyperX. So these guys target audiences gamers. So Their target is straight, and they works with whether it's a BGMI or Valorant or Counter Strike. It does not matter. They will invest money on the product and the tournament. But interesting factor is AMD investing in mobile esports tournaments. We cracked something unique. Everyone is surprised why AMD is investing in a mobile esports tournament. It is a PC product. Why they are investing in mobile? We gave a interesting insight is in our YouTube insight. For example, last 28 days we achieved closely like 30 million viewership. In that 30 million viewership, around 45% of people watching consuming the content from laptop. So that's we told the insights to the brand like AMD, Intel, and they are showing it. But still, the challenging part for us also is cracking non-endemic to gaming and esports.
I think I'll take a cue from what Shiva was pointing towards, right? One thing is very much true that the players are not playing to see ads in the game, right? However, there is a large opportunity for marketers that at the other end is like sitting there to capitalize on a high engagement media like gaming, which probably you won't see anywhere else on the always on screen that a consumer has or a user has. Now, in-game advertising has also evolved. How we are looking at it at our company is that intrinsic in-game advertising or native advertising within the game, which enhances player experience. And of course, the brand is able to tell the story that they want to tell without even disrupting the player experience by throwing in banner ads or rewarded video ads and so on, is something that we see that now is the time when the developer community also needs to build in those native experiences within and open up the doors for brands to capitalize onto that. So that's one way of monetization. The other way is that can you make more gaming experience, and largely it stands true for large developers and large businesses. It may not be essentially true for indie developers. That can there be IP creation using their game properties? Can there be any added assets or content that can be built onto those games, right?
Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Okay. Now, Candy Crush, we all know, is a large example or a large IP, a decade-old IP that exists. They have started utilizing their IP in a very successful manner. That they go and do native integration and create different assets with movie production houses. Right, Barbie is a latest example where their playable character Tiffy or non-playable character Tiffy, they have made it like a Friends of Barbie within the game, like an event experience, right? Which is a very unique way of engaging with the audiences and also giving a large opportunity for millions of users that the brands can capitalize into. And it's a huge monetization opportunity that they've clearly within their game they've created, right? Without even having any advertising. Right? So I think there is a large opportunity that developers can create within their games using the assets that they are building, not initially starting it with that, hey, my goal is to monetize all of these assets, but evolve as the consumers keep spending time more and more, and which are the forms and ways they're engaging, right? So I think all events kind of gives or data points of those events that kind of triggers those advertising and monetization opportunity developers can build on top of that.
Cool. Anybody else has a view? We don't have to go in sequence, but it's all good.
So I'll take a step back and try to answer this, or discuss about this point. Gaming is primarily like content business. You're making content. I mean, of course, you can make like hundreds of tech to make that content much better for users. So like if you look at, because building a game is step one, and then you build a gaming product on that's step two, and then you build a gaming business, that's step three. So it's very important. It's not about like, do we need new forms of ads or do we need new forms of monetization? Because the thing which ads right now, at least programmatic, it works like a clockwork. I don't think we should ignore as an opportunity, because the good question Sharan asked was this, right? So how do they think about today when you're building a game? Because that's very important part. Then you think about the gaming business on the top. So if this is where your money is going to flow in from, and where the money is going to flow in from, that's very important, because and it's not just defined by it's IAP or is it ad. It's about for what user is ready to break and do certain things, either pay or watch something and to pay the money back to you. Either he's paying or someone else is paying for that. So when you look at it like that, so which means like every game will have their own definitions of it. Like for Candy Crush, for instance, would say like, my boosters, that's what is probably going to make money. And like go to like other end of the spectrum, then you say Valorant or some skins is what, then people are ready to pay for skins. So it is not, it's like, okay, take those loops, because that's what you're defining as a business. Okay, that's what is going to give me money. And then you go back and build what you want as core components. So if we can layer and layer top of it, and then say, okay, I'm going to put brands here, I'm going to put rewarded videos here, I'm going to put programmatic here. You can layer and top. But the very important part I see is that think of it like how do you build this business? Because building game is not equal to building gaming business. It's very, very different. So when you look at commercialization of a product that you have built, then fundamentally a lot of things changes. For some games, probably certain formats work really well. For example, look at what's happening in games like Fall Guy today, right? Like they're just like bringing celeb after celeb after celeb, right? The celeb can bring brand along with them, and it will look so native to the game that you will not feel that actually, people are not here to watch ads, but people won't even realize they're actually engaging in an ad because it's brought by the influencer inside the game. So it's multiple varieties of thinking about it, but it's the most, as I said, the core component is think about what is a gaming business and how that's going to fit inside your game. And if we are clear about that, then there are multiple medias to support already today.
I'm just going to add a little bit. I think most of the points have been covered by our colleagues here. But you mentioned what should developers who are creating a game right now be thinking of, right? I mean, that's the important bit. And I think my colleague here, he mentioned really well. It's like building a game and then building a gaming business. So if you go back about 10 years, right, people would often make a game and then worry about how to monetize it, right? What you've seen now with games doing so much better than they used to do is every single developer, successful one, actually thinks about building the gaming business whilst he's building the game, and it's happening parallel, it's happening at the same time, right? That has changed quite a bit. Now, if there's a tip that you have to give to young or budding developers, don't think about innovative ways to monetize, right? There are already pretty defined ways to monetize, which you need to first get right, which will then buy you time to innovate on not just your game, but also ways to monetize it.
So I think gaming is a very fun space to be in. Hence, why shouldn't the advertising be same, and why should you depend purely on performance ad, right? So for a brand, for a client, a performance ad is just another digital way of pushing their ad and reaching to the consumer. You are providing a platform which is providing high engagement, a very great stickiness. So why you can't make it far more interesting, engaging? At the same time, I'm sure you will have this great threat of are you intruding into the game, to the gamers' game territory? Number two, what I felt, I think most of us agreed to, is when you are creating a game, you need to start thinking as to at some point of time you'll get into monetization. Of course, creativity plays important part. As a creator, you are very passionate about what you're creating. You're not really thinking what's going to happen once you launch. Once you start looking for fund, or if you're not able to generate sufficient fund. Number three, start thinking brand at the early stage, because that will help you monetize it further. As an advertiser and as an agency equally responsible for it, we will tend to get shameless because we'll ask sun, earth, moon, everything, because wo khelte waqt mera brand bhule, drink piye, right? So that's taking it too far. But as a game owner or platform owner, you need to decide where you want to draw a line, right? At the same time, you need to figure out whether if the money that's coming in is justifiable. Is it doing justice to the game that you've created? Is it doing justice to the people who are staying invested onto your game?
Thank you. Okay, I want to make sure that this is really relevant to the audience, because what we can do is we can tailor make this conversation for you guys. So out of everybody sitting in this audience right now, including those guys having a very engaging conversation, how many of you are in game development or game publishing? Please show us your hands. Game development or game publishing, or aspiring to be a developer or publisher? Okay, so like 25%. Aspiring, okay, great. How many of you are, say, in other adjacent aspects like, say, ad tech or advertising in the gaming space? What about solutions, gaming company solutions, gaming tech solutions, platform? Right. Anybody who isn't covered in this? Esports? Okay, I meant gaming industry. Oh, sorry, I forgot. I'm sorry. Esports. Who is in the esports space as a either professional player, works in an esports company, interested in that space? Nobody. Sorry? One guy? Okay, one guy in esports. Okay. Two guys in esports, all right. And okay, so what am I missing? This is like 50% of the crowd didn't respond to anything. So what industry are you in, sir? Sorry? Policy. Okay. Super important. Ma'am, sorry? Ad tech. Okay, you didn't raise your hand for the ad tech question. You don't be embarrassed about it. I was in ad tech for a while. I know sometimes I'm not going to raise my hand for that, but yeah. All right, and then we have the cosplayers in the back. Okay, so there is, generally large population of developers here. That's good. So I'm going to ask a question that potentially, let's make it a little controversial, right? First, I would like, Anuj, I'm going to ask you a question to set the tone. You've been doing this for a while. You've been you're a game dev. You got a game. You've been building the game, you're publishing the game for many years. Ad monetization has been really big for you, but I would assume, and the audience would also know, that that's performance mostly, performance ads, right? Sure. Can you tell us a little bit about the relationship, the ease or the difficulty between you guys and how you all work with these advertisers? Do you work directly? It's partly for knowledge. Do you work directly? Do you work through agencies? Do you work through ad tech companies? Who do you work with, and how easy or hard is that relationship to get the result that you want?
So with us, we've developed a great relationship with Google along the years, right? And so for most of our ad tech, programmatic ads, we use AdMob. I think it's pretty simple, straightforward. We use them as a mediation platform, so that also allows us to work with multiple networks, making sure our fill rates, etc., are in place. I think the guys at Google are great once you get to know them. And if your game is performing, they will invest their time, on you to try and get the smallest details right. Other than that, we've also worked with several ad tech companies. One of which, my colleague here knows very well, FramePlay, right? So we've been a partner to FramePlay for the last 2.5 years. Now that's a little bit different. I think it's it's about showing the brand as part of your game, right? So. Yeah. We've worked and made sure that us being a cricket simulation game, I've tried to make sure that the game is made in such a way that essentially every single ad slot that you see in the real world sport of cricket is sort of available in the game. So that means I can place a brand on the stadium, periphery. I can have it on the pitch. You have those pitch mats. I can have it on the jerseys. I can have it. We have a drinks break in the game, so I can have it on the bottle, right? We can also do a segment where, nowadays you see Tata, etc., sponsor cricketing events and they have a car placed outside the stadium, outside the boundary rope. We can have stuff like that. So we've done all of those sort of things as well in the past with different brands. Going back to the question, I think in terms of ad tech, I think this is basically how we've go about our business.
Thanks. I'll throw this question to you, Mr. Deepak. I want to get shake this up a bit. So you mentioned something, and I agree with it, which is that as brands, and then the people representing brands, which is the agencies, it often can feel, especially to smaller developers, for those who are still building out systems. And one is that there's a lot of distance. How do we even talk to a large agency? How do we even reach a Dentsu, an O&M, or all these people who are sort of, you only hear that LinkedIn pe Khan's award mila, something like that, right? Some great ad. And it's very difficult to translate and understand how does that relate to, my 7th Candy Crush clone, right? That I'm building to ensure cash flow. In that case, so one is that distance, but the second is that what you did say was that as an agency, as a brand, you want to go in and ask for as much, right? Which for a lot of gaming developers, for a lot of people in the space, can seem a little adversarial, a little competitive, where they are the custodians of their gameplay, their creativity, their experience. They've created something by putting their hearts and souls in. And then often the conversation that typically games as they grow end up having is, acha wo logo dal dena beech mein. So how do we move beyond this sort of thing? And when the ad tech, when Anuj speaks about ad tech, it's so smooth, right? They come to you, there's a solution, the tech, there's a dashboard, everything is set up. The math, the science, the monetization, the finance behind that is locked in. So what is that gap between the systems and the industries that work in the performance space and the brand space, and how do we bridge that?
So, like you rightly captured, so there is a gap. If the question is there a gap, yes, there is a gap. How the gap can get bridged, it's a two-way process. It can't be managed. It's not that one person's fault and others nothing to do with it. You are excited about what you've created, right? And rightly so. Brand is very excited about what they've created, and they're very clear as to how they want to market themselves and how they get the bang for the buck that they're spending onto your platform. Our suggestion or my observation at personal level has been that when you're coming into see, there is excitement both ends, but the excitement ends over there. You don't really know as to what to be done, because you're coming in, like you said, banner picture. Because you've come and you've tried to sell banner to me, right? You've not tried to sell the overall ecosystem. You've not tried to sell the overall larger gameplay that gaming can get you. So as a brand, I'm restricted to the knowledge that's coming in. For us, it makes life very difficult to figure out what's out there in the market for us to take to the client in terms of solution. From a client point of view, they're pretty clear as to this is the budget, this is where I want to reach out to, and what is the best way to get the desired ROI. And now, thanks to social commerce, there's additional pressure of ensuring that you're putting in money converts into sales as well. So our suggestion or our advice or whatever you may want to call it is, when you're coming in, step one, put the larger picture on play, because I think that makes the narrative much more interesting. Number two, while there is pressure to get ads going onto your platform, but talk about how else you can go beyond, right? So some of the thing that Global has done, and if I could refer to, was a Duracell long-lasting game. Right? So I don't think you need to do anything else onto it. You don't need to market it, because moment you hear this, you know what Duracell stands for, and hence the branding. And as a brand, you would be more than keen to put in money. Right? So solutions like this, I'm sure not everybody can come up with solutions like this, but yes, definitely we can take steps to make things work. When you're talking to agencies like us or to clients directly, I think talk about a larger play instead of keeping it limited to what your urgent requirement is at that point of time. So I don't know if there's a controversy in what I said or not.
No, I think where I'm coming from is I feel like, and I think a lot of people say this, especially developers, maybe not on the esports side, right? But esports as a platform and systems as organizers are the end of that piece, but the games initially need to be built up. And of course, you have these very sophisticated Western games where you can drop a celebrity and you can drop a brand and you can do a few things and have a very well sort of system. But from a initial developer perspective, like you said, when it comes to performance ad, the onus of selling the solution and integrating and coming up with how it works is taken care of by somebody else, not the developer. Whereas in this, and this is what we hear from the ecosystem in general on the ad side, is for the developer to sell themselves and create the solution, but their expertise is not doing that. Their expertise is building the game. And hence I feel like we've been in this chicken and egg sort of loop for a good 5 years at least. And it would be interesting to see, I think what I'm trying to get at is, are there any solutions where we can take the onus off the developer and put it in what my view is the middle partner, who generally is the most creative partner, which is the agency. Because even the brand managers aren't necessarily well educated on the realities of the business.
So I think this is a very classic creative versus brand fight.
Okay.
Creative is obsessed with what they have created, and they don't care where the logo is. Brand is saying, I'm putting in money, and I need my logo needs to look bigger, larger, whatever. So if I'm putting in money, I might push right of way that would come in. As a brand, I'm not putting too much of money into gaming at this point of time, minus brands like Intel, etc., because they don't have option but to stay married to that. But if you look at a larger gameplay, right? If you look beyond that, right? There's a lot of opportunity that can be created, which is not getting marketed. Right? If you want to market that, you don't have much option but to create flexibility. And of course, you have all the right to decide whether the flexibility that you want to give is it interfering into what you have created. Of course, you have all the right to say no, I'm not going to do this. Your call. I mean, for brand, you're just on another platform for them to be on. They'll move on to someone else who's willing to toe the line, right? So that's what we've seen in digital marketing. That's what we're seeing on connected TV advertising. That's what we've seen on host of reality shows that we see, right? So you got brands, got a branding on the cushions, right? I mean, the cushion and the product that's been showcased has got absolutely no relation, right? So I think it's like I said earlier also, it's a two-way channel. Be open, and also you draw a line. If this is possible, what is not possible. He spoke about real cricket. I think a lot of things are possible. What we have seen so far, and I'm sure with what's on currently and what would come up, I think we'll see a lot of those changes will develop. So it's a very important to have a good partnership between the brand and the creators ecosystem to get to monetize it further.
Makes sense. Yep, Anuj, please.
I just want to make one more point. One of the biggest difficulties, right, that we face creative, yes, of course, there are going to be challenges creatively, but I think one of the biggest difficulties that I see, because I've explored branding as a option as monetizing option in games for a long time. We've tried different things with different brands. One of the biggest things I feel are lacking is that we need to push, especially people who are at your place, right? Not us as developers, because you have more access to brands. You need to push the message through that if you are a part of a game, right? If a brand is part of a game natively, right? Part of the game assets, the amount of brand recall and brand awareness. So there are lots of brands who spend tons of money on brand awareness recall campaigns. It's tremendous because when you're gaming, you're actually engaging, right? And if you're not being intrusive at the same time, the recall is amazing. I'll give you an example. There was a brand which sort of makes electric products, right? So we were pitching to them, and he was like, "Oh, but why will I advertise in your game, right? What does my bulb got to do with cricket?" So I said, "Well, I have audience which is predominantly 18 to 35, Indian audience. You're an Indian brand, right? Imagine if he's hitting a 4, and every time he's hitting a 4, your brand name is popping up, right? And I'm sure as he grows older, even at this age, his parents might ask him, and later on his wife might ask him to go downstairs and get a light bulb. He'll look at the rack. He'll say, "Oh, I've been playing this game for 58 minutes a day, right? For the last 1 month. I'm going to go naturally and pick that up," right? I mean, it's just, and he was quite sold on that. But I think, especially people in your place who's front-facing brands every day, I think that message needs to be pushed in. A lot of brands are more comfortable going on a hoarding, right? But they won't go as part of a game asset, right? On the hoarding, you can't track it. Yes, there's the guy who owns the hoarding who says, "Oh, this is the footfall, etc., etc." It can't be proven, right? We can prove what we show with real data, right?
So I think it's both sides. As I say, it is basically like effort versus reward. What you get. It takes half a day to go programmatic in a game. A 4-people dev team with something with 500K DAO can start monetizing the game tomorrow. So when it comes to because it's not touching the game layer at all, right? There is no change of texture, nothing. It's just like sitting on top of it. So how I see it is there's a fundamental tech missing over there. Like for those guys to talk about how can I go sit in any game I want, right? Okay, I can push 100 things, the game can pick 2 things, so that it's available as an ad format, right? Maybe very interesting thing might come out of this Iron Source Unity collab. May introduce completely new stuff because now the engine is actually part of the ad network, so it can provide a lot of differentiation. That it's not easy as well in the sense because the most interesting things, I always give an example of you when I go to speak to people like Anzu and all these guys. They say like, oh, we want to put like hoarding in a car racing game, right? You're bloody racing, right? The billboard comes for about 0.2 seconds. And then there are like multiple billboards out there sitting in each of them. So what the brand gets out of it may not be so much. And for that brand to, for example, whose responsibility is like, should the brand create the texture and give it to the developer so he integrates the texture in his billboard because it's a 3D billboard? Or you go to developer and say, no, this is too much of an effort for me because I have to spend like 2 sprints on this just to integrate this ad now in this format. So I think that the fundamentally there is a gap there. I think it needs a core tech, as I said. If once a core tech comes up where the job of Dentsu becomes a lot easier, you know what, I can reach about 15 million users on these kind of games, this is the audience profile, makes it so interesting for the brand tomorrow, okay, I'll put it now. So then there is a gap out there in the market. Of course, we can keep complaining about each other, whether it's like, no, it's a game maker or the brand, but I think fundamentally the tech is missing. And it is, a lot of people have been trying for quite some time. I know about like 15 companies in the world, some of them in Israel, Turkey, and all these guys, but none of them are able to achieve at a mature level that it is like, production and operational tomorrow. That is what is causing the major tussle in my view, at least.
That's great. Okay. No, thank you. This is something that's bothering a lot of people, like you said. It's been around for a while, and it ends up being the crux of the question in terms of if there's interest and there's demand, which is sort of the gold word, right? If there's demand, supply will emerge. But somehow there's this, it's almost like there's an air gap, between the two systems, and someone needs to bridge that. Maybe with AI, we'll find better ways of, tracking viewership and in a way that compares to, say, a billboard, and hence pricing can also come together. I think another challenge that we didn't talk about is, sorry, yeah, they could have done. I think the question is how much tech can you deploy and how many variations. With AI, potentially you could have a hub, and then everybody agrees that this is the metrics and the data that we all agree is a gold standard. But also then you bring pricing on par, because like I said, what we didn't discuss is the challenge in pricing and going to a brand manager and saying this is a billboard and this is a billboard in the game. How do you put them? How do you compare them? That's at least my experience working with a few people in the brand space. All right, I think we're out of time, so I'll ask one quick question to maybe all of you from an advice perspective to users, to viewers here. Sure. What? Have a question? Okay, that'll be better. Okay, guys, we're going to wrap up. So if there are any questions from the audience, we'd love to take them. Otherwise, I'll ask a less interesting one. Okay. Yes, you're awesome.
Thank you. So you mentioned that firstly, you said don't innovate.
So, could you tell us your name first? So we can.
Sorry. Hi, I'm Sahil Sen. I am a product marketing manager. I'm coming from the film and advertising space, coming into games more recently, helped pitch like BIL business to abroad, whatever. But I see a lot of potential in games, and I'm trying to see how can I help Indian studios who are making really interesting games reach their audiences, keep making games. So my question, something that is, well, it's a comment first on something that you said, which was don't innovate. Ganga, you mentioned this. Don't innovate. First, understand what is already working, and from there, innovate. My question is, what would your advice be to somebody who's starting out? What is, say, the priority places to focus on to, say, start that learning process? I'm coming from a different space. I'm doing all the learning I can, but I would like to, yeah.
Yeah, so since you're coming from a movie space, I'll use that as an example. So you might watch a movie for what, like 3 times max, 4 times max. But you pick a game, you pay for like 3 years, 4 years, right? So the only thing that matters for a game maker is if a player comes today, can you make him come tomorrow? Okay. If that's a one problem you're able to solve, right? A lot of problems will automatically get solved for you. Monetization, like whatever you want, because the life cycle of a game is extremely different from other content formats, and that's a core understanding. And the only thing we want to work on is the life cycle of a user. If you can churn him every day into the game without fail, you've achieved so much. I mean, that's the struggle every developer goes through today, and it is not like there's one way to do it. I won't say like don't innovate there. I think you can use all your brains to innovate that. How do you make the user come back tomorrow? You can put all your innovations there because other machineries are working, right? You don't need like you have multiple partners. See, just to give an example, InMobi out of Bangalore, like so Unicorn in 2011, sitting like an ad behemoth sitting inside Bangalore, ready to support you. If you have a game where the user wants to come back tomorrow, we'll pour in all the efforts to make money for you because that's how we make money, right? So that's like fundamentally it's okay for you, but then like that one problem is where you have to solve. If a guy comes today, can he come tomorrow? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kevin. I'm a student from Christ. So you mentioned how it's important to bring the player back tomorrow, but doesn't that create quite an unhealthy mindset that games must be a continuous experience that the person must be engaged in for 3 to 4 years? Same for movies and shows as well. Sure, there are shows like Grey's Anatomy that have 20 seasons, but it's also about providing quality that may not last as long as well. There's been wonderful games that are short experiences for 1 to 2 days that you play and you have a good time about it. I feel like it's quite unhealthy to set the precedent that games should be this long, like they should have a certain lifespan. And yeah, I feel like that needs to be addressed as well.
Let me take this question. You have like different genre of games, right? So you have starting from hyper casual, lives for 14 days within person's phone and goes away. And there are games which are living for 140 months in person's phone. I am not telling you're supposed to create it's not about like, whether I want that addictive behavior on a game. What I'm saying is the game is so good that user wants to enjoy that experience on an everyday basis. The core is so good of the game that it is not about, oh, I'm addicted. Like it's not like, no, I don't want to use certain words, but it's more about the user wanting to come back to get the same experience or like better experience. Like, for example, if you look at any of these games, right, like the day one experience of the game is not, it's very different from a day 30 experience or day 160 day experience, right? So because there's a content, there is events, there are multiple people playing, etc. It's a holistic experience. It provides over a period of day as you play the game. It's not like, okay, one activity you're doing on an everyday basis. So that's how it's not about the precedence of whether you should look for 3-4 years. It's not about that. It's about, that is exactly I was telling, what is your gaming business, right? Like, for example, if you take someone like cricket, like if he is looking for a user, 14-day life cycle of a user, I don't think he can survive that app at all. He cannot run that business. You can go to other end and say something like Helix Jump, 14-day life cycle, fine, it can survive. Today, I don't think it can still survive because the CAC has gone really high. But the point being that it is not about building an addictive behavior. The experience is so good that user wants to come back because the retention is the one part which every game developer wants to solve for. Once you're able to solve that that's when you can actually look at a business. Because we are telling, you're allowing user to play for 2 days. I don't think it's possible to build a business out of it. If you're not building a business out of it, you can't make the next game. You're out of the market already.
You can't pay people salaries. You come in and you promise people that, look, I will give you a job. You'll create for me. Look, unless you're somebody who goes to people and says, work for me, I'll give you exposure and all, and experience, which is, by the way, a crap thing. If people need to run their houses and pay their loans and take their kids to school and pay for fuel, it's not cheap in our country or anywhere else nowadays. You have to fulfill your commitments as somebody who runs a business. Right? These are people who depend on you. There are people who give you money. They give you that money with a contract and a belief that you will give them more money back. And that's why you take it. Otherwise, it's nobody forcing you to do it. And then finally, you have a vision, right? Each creator has a right to create what it is they wish to create. I mean, I think there's a contract in that unwritten spoken contract between the creator and the user. The user chooses to experience and gain enjoyment for that. And I don't think we are any individuals in a place to make that judgment on what somebody should enjoy, how long they should enjoy it, or what an artist can or cannot create. Within the boundaries of the law, of course. And finally, if you have to do this, it's also then your responsibility as a creator to support and pay all those people who supported you in that creation. That's fair as their contract, and help them grow in their ambition and dreams, right? That's one part of the picture. You can make a call, you can make a decision that I want to write, and just to give a different example, right? You could say, I want to write a short story, but at the same time, you could say, I want to write a series of comics that spans 20 years, and somewhere in the middle say, I'll build a multiverse and then write 500 other comics, and suddenly I am Marvel. Then it's not fair to say, then are we inherently saying that it's wrong to tell somebody to create a comic series that's engaging? How does one then judge the value of that person's childhood memories that, oh, I still love and read comics, right? We don't say that's evil. I mean, they used to back in the day, but we don't say that today. So I think that, maybe to keep in mind is the fact that creator, user, and the responsibility of the creator to, fulfill his contract or her contract with the people who help them create.
Thank you.
All right, final question, then we have to go. Do you want the mic? Okay. You can just put your hand up. So.
Yeah, Mr. Anuj, you told for the developers not to find creative ways to monetize and to go for things that actually work, right? At least in the initial stages. But what are the future ways to kind of, expand or diversify the monetization for the games, going to the future? That's number one. And number two would be a generic question for all of the panel. Going forward, how does the Indian gaming market make games for the global industry and create global impact?
I'll take the first one. Do you want me to take both of them, or just give it to someone else for the second one? So look, when I said don't innovate or don't try to think about how to monetize, and basically I'm saying use the especially to do with advertisements, right? I'm saying use the current programmatic ads and the way things are working. Like my colleague here said, it takes 4 hours to implement. You're making money if your game's doing well. But on the other side, I think if you were to think long, right, and I'm talking about my own personal experience. So think of it that one way to do it is that, with the help of our friends here, right, more brands will be interested in gaming, right? And I see that happening. Make your assets in such a way that they can be customized, right? Put certain things that you see, like for instance, in my case, I know that, I'm going to keep getting some brand or the other on my stadium periphery, hoardings, etc. We've already allocated for that. Like when we decided to make the game, we put certain assets, including like the jerseys, etc. All those assets, we don't put them as part of the build. We put them at, on the cloud so that we can change them whenever we want, right? Because that again becomes a painful scenario that, say for instance, if I were to say you made your game, right, you've used your conventional methods, and after that a brand wants to come in, and advertise in you, and then each time a brand comes in, you're supposed to create and go through an update cycle. That gets very expensive and tedious, right? So that could be one way of thinking that, okay, if you think that you have some advertising slots within your game, make sure those assets are created in such a way that it eases your burden, right? Or you allocate for those slots beforehand. Other than that, it depends on what kind of game you're building. But if you do get to that point where you're pushing yourself to think of how else you can monetize, you can look at, I mean, your game would have been pretty big by then, and depending what kind of game it is, you can look to try and seed it into seeing if it's capable of being an esportable game, right? Because then that opens up several other avenues for you, depending on what kind of game it is.
Thanks, Anuj.
I think those,
we might not have too much time for that. We can call off stage, but very quickly, if you're building for the world, I think why not? You should.
If you're saying
how to build for the world, the fundamental of trying to be in a competitive space is understand the audience. So I'd say number one, as much as you love what you do, first understand who your audience is. Take the time and realize you're not building for yourself. You're building whatever vision you have for somebody else. So spend some time understanding who the audience is in that market. Don't build for the world, build for one market. And once you see what's working there, it's a bit about doing market research, achieving even half the level of quality, and you find an audience. And once you start getting that organic traction, you can start building in more data analytics to support good UA that will help you scale in those markets. This is a very complex and long topic, but that was just a very, very, 750,000 foot view, right? So with that, I'd like to thank everybody here. Really appreciate everybody being here and giving time and listening to my questions. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. Group picture.